I am Stephanie Hayes, now 30 years old, and once just an ordinary graphic designer scraping by in San Francisco's Mission District. 2 years ago, my life flipped when I won $668,000 in the lottery after taxes. It was my ticket out of that tiny rented apartment, crushing student debt and constant overtime shifts. But sharing the news with my parents turned into a nightmare. They scolded me relentlessly, demanding I hand over half, $334,000 for my sister's house after her messy divorce. When I refused, my mother slapped me hard and screamed, "Greedy, you will pay for this." I walked out without a word, cutting ties right there. And then, 1 week later, 32 missed calls from her begging, "Please save your sister." My reply, a single text. "Who's that? Have you ever been bullied by someone close to you? Share your story in the comments." That all started 2 years ago when I was 28 and living in that cramped apartment in San Francisco's Mission District. I worked as a graphic designer at a small ad agency, pulling constant overtime to cover basics. My days blurred into alarm clocks at dawn, crowded BART rides, and late nights tweaking layouts under fluorescent lights. Paychecks barely stretched after rent on my 40-square-meter space utilities and minimum payments on my $20,000 in student debt. I skipped social outings, wore the same outfits on rotation, and relied on office coffee to save a few bucks. Every Sunday evening, as a ritual escape, I stopped at the corner store and spent $10 on lottery tickets. It wasn't about expecting to win big, it was the brief daydream of freedom from spreadsheets tracking every expense. Imagine clearing debt, affording a decent place, or even pursuing that MBA I'd shelved. The odds were ridiculous, but that tiny investment kept hope alive amid the grind. One Tuesday night in April, I sat on my threadbare couch eating leftover pizza from work. During a commercial break on some mindless show, I remembered the tickets from the previous weekend. The drawing had happened Monday, but exhaustion had delayed my check. I pulled up the lottery app on my phone and compared numbers with casual indifference. The first matched, then the second. By the third, my pulse quickened. When all 6 aligned, disbelief hit like a wave. I refreshed the page multiple times, convinced of a glitch. I double-checked each digit aloud, hands trembling. After 15 verifications, I dialed the lottery hotline. The representative confirmed I'd won $1 million before taxes, netting $668,000 after federal and state deductions. I ended the call and stared at the wall for an hour, mind racing through possibilities. No more debt, a secure home, investments for stability, maybe starting freelance work on my terms. The next day, I called in sick, rare for me, even with actual illness. I spent hours researching lottery pitfalls, tax traps, bad investments, family demands that bankrupt winners. I scheduled meetings with 3 financial advisors and a lawyer focused on windfall management. Their advice aligned: opt for lump sum, avoid flashy spending. I met Mark Chen, a trusted advisor who helped craft a solid plan. 70% $468,000 into diversified investments like index funds and bonds. 15% $100,000 for a modest condo down payment in a safer neighborhood. 10% $67,000 toward an evening MBA program at UC Berkeley. The remaining 5% $33,000 for immediate needs and a small buffer. For 3 weeks, I told no one. I kept showing up at work, maintained my frugal habits, and handled paperwork discreetly. My boyfriend at the time, Alex, slept beside me that night. I went oblivious as I lay awake planning. We weren't serious. He was more convenience than commitment, but even he didn't know. Secrecy felt essential until everything locked in. Eventually, the urge to share grew, but not from excitement alone. Part of me wanted to test my family one last time. Would they celebrate my success without strings or revert to old patterns? After weighing it, I dialed my parents on a Sunday afternoon, knowing both would be home. My mother, Laura Hayes, answered her voice carrying that familiar distracted edge, as if multitasking something more important. "Stephanie, what's up?" I kept my tone even. "Mom, I have some big news to share." Her interest piqued slightly. "Oh, did you get a raise or something?" No mention of my ongoing struggles. She never asked about those. "Better than that. I won the lottery, a substantial amount." Silence, then she called out, "Brian, get on the line. Stephanie says she hit the lottery." My father, Brian Hayes, joined, his voice booming with sudden curiosity. "What are we talking here, kiddo?" I explained the win and rough amount, omitting details of my plan. Their reactions shifted from skepticism to forced enthusiasm laced with questions about exact figures. "This could really help everyone," my father said vaguely. Unease crept in, but I suggested dinner to celebrate. "Come over Saturday." My mother agreed quickly, more animated than in years. "We'll make it special." Hanging up, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. This windfall was my chance at independence, but sharing it might reveal if they'd ever see me as equal to my sister, Brittany Hayes. Deep down, I suspected the test would fail spectacularly. 3 weeks after that call, I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house in Sunset District, a familiar 3-bedroom home with neatly trimmed hedges and a faded welcome mat. I carried a $50 bottle of Cabernet and a bouquet of lilies, clinging to a flicker of hope that this dinner might be different, that they'd celebrate my win without strings. The scent of garlic and marinara hit me as I stepped inside, but the warmth felt staged, like a scene set for a play. My mother, Laura, greeted me with a quick hug, her perfume sharp and nostalgic. "Stephanie, so good to see you." She said, her smile tight as she took the wine and flowers. My father, Brian, emerged from the living room, a glass of bourbon already in hand. "There's our lucky girl," he boomed, but his eyes darted to my purse as if the money was tucked inside. We sat at the dining table set with their rarely used china, a gesture that felt more performative than festive. The first course, bruschetta with too much basil, passed with small talk. They asked about my job, my apartment, even Alex, though they'd met him only once. Their interest seemed genuine but forced, like they were checking boxes. "Mom, you made lasagna," I asked, noticing the dish. She nodded proudly. "Your favorite." It wasn't eggplant parmesan was, but I let it slide, not wanting to sour the mood early. As we moved to the main course, the air shifted. My mother set down her fork, her expression turning serious. "Stephanie, $668,000 is life-changing money." She began, voice measured. "Have you thought about what it could do for the family?" My father leaned forward, nodding. "It's a blessing for all of us, not just you." My stomach tightened. "I've got plans," I said carefully. "Investments, a condo down payment, paying off my debt, and an MBA program." My mother's smile faltered. "That's responsible, dear, but family comes first. Your sister needs help." She glanced at my father, who took the cue. "Brittany's going through a rough divorce. She needs a house to stabilize her life. $334,000 would cover it." I set my glass down, heart racing, but voice steady. "Half my winnings for Brittany's house." My mother nodded as if it were obvious. "She's struggling, Stephanie. A home would give her a fresh start." I couldn't hold back anymore. A fresh start like she got at 16 with a brand new Tesla, while I drove a beat-up Honda with 150,000 miles, or when you paid her $60,000 a year tuition at Parsons, but I had to borrow $40,000 for Berkeley. My father's face reddened. Circumstances were different back then. I shook my head. No, they weren't. You always chose Brittany parties, lessons, college, everything. I scraped by, and now you want half of what I earned? My mother's eyes narrowed. We gave you a good life, Stephanie. Don't be ungrateful. The word stung, but I pressed on. Ungrateful, I worked weekends at McDonald's to afford that car. I stayed up nights applying for scholarships while you wrote checks for Brittany. Where was family when I needed it? Silence gripped the room. My father's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, my mother stood her hand flashing across my cheek in a sharp slap. Greedy! She screamed. You'll pay for this selfishness. The sting burned, but I didn't flinch. My father rose, voice low and cold. This isn't a request, Stephanie. You give $334,000 to help your sister, or you're no longer part of this family, no holidays, no calls, nothing. Brittany appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of quiet disappointment. I thought you'd understand, sis, she said softly, but she didn't challenge them. I stood grabbing my purse, my voice calm despite the chaos inside. You made your choice years ago. Now I'm making mine, I choose myself. I walked out the door, clicking shut behind me, their stunned silence louder than any argument. Driving away from my parents' house, the sting on my cheek still pulsed, but it wasn't the slap that burned hottest, it was the clarity it ignited. As I navigated the dark streets of San Francisco, my mind churned not with tears, but with a cold, sharp focus. The years of being sidelined in my own family flooded back, each memory a piece of evidence in a case I'd been building without realizing. It wasn't sadness driving me now, it was the resolve to never let them define my worth again. My earliest memory of their favoritism hit when I was 6, clutching a grocery store cake at my birthday candles, flickering in our dim kitchen. A handful of friends came gifts, mostly dollar store trinkets. My mother Laura served pizza on paper plates, calling it practical. Months later, my sister Brittany, barely 4, got a backyard extravaganza bouncy house professional clown, a 3-tiered cake that must have cost $200. Relatives I hardly knew arrived with wrapped toys. I asked my mother why Brittany's party was bigger. She's younger, Stephanie, she said dismissively. Little kids need more fuss. At 10, I begged for art lessons after my teacher praised my sketches. Too expensive, my father Brian said, barely looking up from his newspaper. That same year, Brittany 8 mentioned liking music, and they bought her a $3,000 piano, plus private lessons twice a week. Music builds character, my mother claimed. I traced my drawings alone in my room using pencils I'd bought with chore money. High school sharpened the divide. At 16, I worked weekends at McDonald's, saving $3,000 over a year for a used 2005 Honda Civic with 150,000 miles. My parents chipped in $1,000, calling it generous. It'll teach you discipline, my father said, handing me the keys. 2 years later, Brittany turned 16, and they surprised her with a gleaming Tesla Model 3 $35,000, complete with custom rims. She needs a safe car for her activities, my mother explained as if my debate team and part-time job didn't count. College was the final blow. I worked my way to a 3.8 GPA and a solid SAT score, enough for UC Berkeley, but my parents said their savings were tight. I scraped together scholarships and took out $40,000 in loans to cover tuition and dorms. Meanwhile, Brittany enrolled at Parsons, a private design school, $60,000 a year, fully funded by them. She has such creative potential, my mother gushed. We can't let money hold her back. The implication that my potential was less worthy cut deeper than any outright insult. Brittany and I weren't enemies, she wasn't cruel, just oblivious, floating through life on their generosity. Our talks were shallow, limited to holiday small talk. She never questioned her advantages, and I never confronted her not wanting to seem bitter. But driving that night, I saw it clearly. My parents didn't lack money. They lacked the will to invest in me. Every excuse, tight budgets, different circumstances was a lie to justify choosing her. I wasn't their daughter. I was their backup plan expected to succeed without support, to give without receiving. I pulled into a gas station lot, the city lights blurring through my windshield. My phone stayed silent, no apologies, no follow-ups from them. Just the echo of my mother's scream and my father's ultimatum. I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed one line: "They chose Brittany 22 years ago. Now I choose myself." This wasn't about the $668,000 anymore. It was about making them face the consequences of treating me as less. I wasn't plotting revenge in some dramatic sense, just a deliberate, quiet refusal to let their priorities control my future. The morning after I walked out, my phone lit up with notifications. By noon, I had 47 missed calls, mostly from my mother, Laura, some from my father, Brian, even a few from my sister, Brittany. Texts flooded in, relentless and sharp. Laura's messages alternated between pleas and accusations. "How could you abandon us like this? And your sister needs you, Stephanie." Brian's were curt. "Blood is thicker than money. Fix this." Brittany's hit softer but cut deeper. "I never thought you'd turn your back on me, sis." Each ping felt like a jab prodding the guilt I'd spent years suppressing. Then the social media storm started. My cousin Danielle Hayes posted on Facebook, no names, but pointed enough. Some people forget their roots when luck hits. She tagged San Francisco, making it clear who she meant. Comments piled up from distant relatives, uncles, aunts, second cousins I hadn't seen in years, labeling me selfish, cold, ungrateful. A high school friend messaged privately, "Heard you won big, but won't help your family, that's harsh." I scrolled through the posts, my chest tightening their words, echoing my mother's scream from the night before. By day 3, Laura called from a new number, her voice cracking through sobs. "Stephanie, Brittany's falling apart after her divorce. She's depressed, barely eating. A house would give her stability. You don't want her to spiral, do you?" The question landed like a punch, twisting my resolve. I opened my banking app, fingers hovering over the transfer button, ready to send $334,000 just to stop the noise. The thought of their approval, even conditional, was tempting a return to the family I'd always wanted but never had. I might have caved if Megan Thompson, a senior colleague who'd become my work confidant, hadn't stopped by my apartment that evening. I'd told her about the win a week earlier, needing someone's perspective outside the chaos. Seeing my phone screen littered with notifications, she sat me down. "This is emotional pressure, Stephanie, not love," she said firmly. "They're weaponizing guilt to control you. If you give in now, they'll expect it every time you succeed." Her words snapped me back. I thought of all the times they'd used family to justify neglecting me, every birthday, every milestone where I was an afterthought. Megan's clarity fueled my next move. I blocked Laura's number, then Brian's, then Brittany's. I unfriended Danielle and every relative on Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn, where a few had started messaging about family unity. I changed my work email and set my personal one to filter their messages to spam. The silence was deliberate, a wall I built not out of anger but strategy. They'd always counted on my compliance, my need to please. Now they'd face the void of my absence. 2 weeks later, Danielle tried again, sending a LinkedIn message. "Your parents are worried sick. Can we talk?" I read it, let it sit, and didn't reply. The lack of response unnerved them more than any argument could. A mutual friend texted saying Laura had called her asking if I'd changed my mind. I ignored that too. Their desperation was rising, and I could feel it even through the blocked numbers. Each unanswered attempt exposed their reliance on me as their fallback plan. For the first time, I held the power, and I wasn't giving it back. 4 months after I blocked their numbers, I started rebuilding my life with a precision that felt almost surgical. The silence I'd imposed wasn't just about cutting contact, it was about creating space to become someone they couldn't touch. First, I wired $20,000 to clear my student debt await I'd carried since Berkeley. The confirmation email from the lender felt like a diploma of freedom. Next, I put $100,000 toward a down payment on a 2-bedroom condo in Soma, a trendy San Francisco neighborhood with secure entry and a small gym. I furnished it deliberately teal couch reclaimed, wood table, abstract prints that spoke to my aesthetic, not clearance racks. For the first time, my home was mine, not a temporary stop. I enrolled in UC Berkeley's evening MBA program, allocating $67,000 for tuition. Classes 3 nights a week were grueling alongside my job, but the challenge sharpened me. At the ad agency, I pitched a new workflow that cut design turnaround by 15%. My boss noticed, and by month 5, I was promoted to senior designer with a $10,000 salary bump. The raise wasn't life-changing, but it signaled I was more than my lottery win. I was earning my place. While building this new life, I kept tabs on my family through a fake Instagram account I'd created. No direct contact, just observation. I saw my father, Brian, post about early retirement to focus on family, a vague caption hinting at strain. My mother, Laura, listed jewelry for sale on Facebook Marketplace, pearl earrings, a gold necklace she'd worn for years. Brittany's freelance design page showed fewer posts, her last update a generic logo job for $2,000. Through a mutual friend's story, I learned they'd taken a $200,000 second mortgage to cover Brittany's divorce legal fees and her rent. Their financial moves were reckless banking on her comeback while burning through savings. I wasn't gloating, I was studying them like a strategist tracking opponents. Their choices confirmed what I'd realized. Driving away that night, they'd always prioritized Brittany's needs even at their own expense. My role had been to stay in the background, ready to bail them out. Not anymore. To fortify myself, I started sessions with Dr. Victoria Reed, a therapist specializing in family dynamics. She didn't push me to heal old wounds, but taught me to recognize their tactics, guilt as leverage, favoritism as control. Your strength isn't in fighting them, she said during one session, but in refusing to play their game. Her insights gave me emotional armor, letting me see their pressure for what it was, desperation, not love. At a Berkeley MBA networking event, I met Zachary Moore, a financial analyst with a dry wit and steady presence. Over coffee, we swapped stories of navigating toxic family expectations his parents had pushed him toward law, ignoring his knack for numbers. "Family should lift you up, not hold you hostage," he said. And I felt a connection I hadn't with Alex, who drifted away after I refused to share details of my win. Zachary respected my boundaries, never prying about my family or finances, and our dates became a quiet refuge. Over 18 months, I watched my family's facade crack through that fake account. Brian's posts turned to complaints about tight budgets. Laura sold more heirlooms, a watch, a ring on local buy-sell groups. Brittany moved back into their house, her freelance gigs drying up. Their second mortgage payments were eating them alive, and I knew foreclosure loomed if they didn't adjust. I felt no urge to intervene. Their choices had built this mess, and I was done being their safety net. My life, new home promotion, MBA Zachary was proof I didn't need their approval to thrive. 20 months after I silenced their calls, the consequences of my family's choices caught up with them. Through a former co-workers group chat, I learned their Sunset District house had been foreclosed. The bank seized it after they missed payments on that $200,000 second mortgage taken to cover Brittany's divorce costs. They'd relocated to a cramped rental in East Oakland, a rougher area with barred windows and flickering streetlights. Brittany, once propped up as their golden child, lost her freelance design clients and now worked part-time as a barista, barely scraping by on tips. My mother, Laura, had taken a low-paying cashier job at a local supermarket. My father, Brian, picked up odd consulting gigs to supplement their dwindling savings. Laura tried reaching me through my company's front desk, leaving messages with the receptionist. One slipped through to my work email. "Stephanie, I don't want money. I just want to talk. We made mistakes and I see that now." I read it once, then deleted it without a reply. The words sounded softer than her usual tone, but they didn't erase 28 years of being an afterthought. A month later, my cousin Danielle contacted a mutual friend who passed along her plea. "Your parents are struggling, barely affording rent, eating cheap meals. Brittany's in therapy after a breakdown. They've learned their lesson. Can you forgive them?" I texted back one word: "No." I wasn't heartless, but I'd spent enough time with Dr. Victoria Reed to understand their pattern. Their apologies came not from genuine regret, but from desperation triggered by their financial collapse. If I opened the door now, the cycle would restart the moment they stabilized. I'd be their safety net again, expected to give without receiving. I refused to let that define me. Instead, I doubled down on my own path. I'd finished my MBA at Berkeley with a 3.9 GPA, landing a promotion to creative director at the agency with a $95,000 salary and bonuses. My condo in Soma, now fully furnished, was a sanctuary, secure, modern mine. Zachary Moore proposed during a quiet hike in Marin County, offering a simple silver ring and a promise of partnership, not obligation. We planned a small wedding, inviting only close friends, my chosen family who valued me for me, not my bank account. Using $33,000 from my emergency fund, I established the Self-Made Women's Scholarship, supporting young women from toxic families with tuition grants and mentorship for trade schools or college. Working with recipients, I saw my younger self in their struggles, determined, overlooked, but capable. Their successes, like mine, came from grit, not handouts. One morning, my assistant buzzed me. "A woman named Laura is downstairs asking for you." I glanced out my office window, picturing her standing in the lobby, maybe clutching another desperate note. "Tell security to escort her out," I said calmly. "Add her to the no-entry list." Later that day, I sent a final text to her old number, assuming she still used it. "You taught me family means nothing when money's involved. Thank you for the lesson. Don't contact me again." I blocked it immediately. Standing in my corner office, city skyline stretching below, I felt no anger or sadness, just certainty. Real family doesn't demand your sacrifice, they celebrate your strength. I'd built mine from scratch, Zachary friends, mentees, and they carried my worth, not my last name. My victory wasn't the money. It was knowing I'd never need their approval to thrive.